Hey guys, my name is Rachel and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. So I've been kind of going back and forth with whether I wanted to cover this case that we're going to be talking about today for quite a while because, without giving away where I used to live or anything like that, this case actually took place extremely close to where I used to live and where I went to high school. This is probably one of the cases that hits home to me the most because I didn't personally know her myself, but I know a lot of people that did know her, and she went to high school with my sister. People that I went to high school with and people that I knew would share these articles on Facebook and talk about them, and everyone is so upset about what's going on in this case that I didn't know if I should talk about it. I've never covered a case that affected people that I personally know, but because this is something that happened in such a small town in Illinois, this case just hasn't gotten the exposure that it deserves. So I decided to go ahead and share with you her story. Today, we are going to be talking about the incredibly frustrating case of Samantha Harer. Samantha Grace Harer was 23 years old at the time of her death. She was from a small town called Channahon in Illinois, and she went to St. Francis University, where she graduated in 2016 after studying criminal justice. Samantha was caring, compassionate, and giving. She loved animals and had an adorable little kitten named Salem. Her compassion and her interests in criminal justice led her to her job as an emergency dispatcher. It was February 13th at 8:19 a.m. when authorities received a call from a man who said that he had just found his girlfriend dead in her one-bedroom apartment from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. This man was 33-year-old Crest Hill police officer Felipe Phil Flores, who at the time was Samantha's estranged boyfriend. In this call, he said that he had just found Samantha after she had just shot herself in the head, and he made sure to make it known to the dispatcher that he was a police officer and not just some normal everyday guy that was calling.
Okay, where's the gun at?
In between.
What apartment number is she in?
Apartment 8.
Okay. Is she breathing at all?
No.
Okay, were you with her when she did this?
I walked out of the room. She argued with me. I heard the gun rack. I tried to come back into the room, and she shot herself.
Okay. Is this Phil?
Yeah.
Okay, it's Marie, okay. I got fire heading over there. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay, is she in her apartment, Phil?
Yeah, we're in her bedroom.
Okay, where did she shoot herself at?
In the head.
Okay. Okay, Cyrus and Rod, okay. And she's in apartment 8, Adam?
Yeah.
Do you want to attempt CPR? Is there any chance we can help her?
She's not breathing. I can see brain matter. I gotta put her cat away before he gets out.
Okay. I promise they're coming as fast as they can, okay?
Come here, Salem.
Just throw him in the bathroom or anywhere you can get him.
I'm trying to. You in? Oh my God.
You know when she did this?
She just did this. Just when I called 911.
Okay.
We were arguing. She told me to leave. I left. I heard her gun rack. She locked herself in the bedroom, and she pulled the trigger, and I came busting in.
Okay.
When authorities showed up to the apartment, they found Samantha laying on the floor, completely naked, with a single gunshot wound to her head. The gun was Flores' Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun. Phil Flores was also at the scene. He was wearing blue jeans, clean white tube socks, and a black hoodie with a blood spatter all over it. Paramedics found a faint pulse in Samantha and attempted CPR, but it was of no use because she was deceased by the time that she reached the hospital. Now, this is what happened according to Phil Flores. At around 8 a.m. that morning, Phil was at Samantha's apartment when the two started having a heated argument. This is backed by neighbors who reported hearing a commotion coming from Samantha's bedroom that morning. The neighbor said that he heard banging on the walls and actually heard a woman's voice yelling, "Let me go." Now, according to Flores, she never actually did say, "Let me go," so there's a bit of contradiction there. After this, Flores said that Samantha asked him to leave and that he did. He was walking away, but as he was leaving Samantha's room, he heard the gun rack, then he heard her locking herself into her room after slamming the door shut, and then he heard a gunshot. He said he then busted into her room and saw her laying on the floor with a gunshot wound to her head, with the gun laying between her legs. After he got 911 on the phone, the dispatcher told him to attempt CPR, but he refused because he said that she wasn't breathing and he could see brain matter, so there was no use. But as she was dying, he did apparently kneel next to her and he did touch her at some point, but he didn't exactly say where. 24 hours after their daughter's death, Samantha's parents, Kevin and Heather Harer, were informed of their daughter's death. They were told in a matter-of-fact manner that their daughter took her own life. However, Samantha's parents were skeptical because they knew that Samantha had absolutely no history of depression or suicidal thoughts, so they just knew that there was absolutely no way that she would have taken her own life like this. They were firm in their belief that Phil must have been the one responsible for this. So now I'm going to kind of get into why they think that Phil might have been responsible for this. So first of all, we know that Phil Flores had a pretty sketchy history. He had previously been accused of public drunkenness and driving while intoxicated. In 2016, he had also been accused of sexually assaulting a woman named Kristen Kurtz while she was sleeping. According to the police report, she had been at a bar called Bobby's Tap in Joliet when Philip had showed up to the bar and the two had struck up a conversation. Apparently, the two had previously been roommates, so they were kind of talking about that, and he kind of apologized to her about his past behavior. After a while, she finished up drinking and her friend were leaving the bar and, they started to head home. But Phil told her that he would follow her to make sure that she made it home safely. That's when she went home, went to sleep, only to wake up with a man on top of her sexually assaulting her. Of course, she was absolutely terrified and told him to leave, but he just wouldn't. She was terrified to report this to police because she knew that he was an officer himself, but she decided to report it anyways. At the start of this case, the Crest Hill Police Department started the investigation, but later handed it off to the Illinois State Police District 5 in Lockport, where they made the decision not to file sexual assault charges against him unless more evidence materialized in the future. Her worst fears came true and he wasn't charged with anything and he was allowed to go back to work. So clearly it looks like Phil Flores had a little bit of a history, maybe getting off because of his status of a police officer, or at least, had a very sketchy past that he didn't have to take any responsibility for. Again, the family also stated that she had absolutely no history of depression or suicidal thoughts in the past. She had a lot going for her. She graduated college. She was working at a job as an emergency dispatcher. There was absolutely no signs that she would have wanted to take her own life. They also mentioned that she had wanted to break up with Flores for a very long time before this happened. Plus, besides just the signs that she wouldn't want to take her own life, we think about the very obvious blood splatter that was present on Flores's clothing. How did this blood splatter get on his clothing if he wasn't in the room when the trigger was pulled and didn't perform CPR? If he didn't perform CPR or wasn't in the room when the trigger was pulled, there's no reason for blood splatter to be on his clothes. The facts just don't make any sense with his story. Samantha's parents were also deeply troubled by the fact that Samantha didn't even leave a note and said that, women rarely use firearms as a method of suicide, which is totally true. Women tend to use other methods like overdosing, things like that. So it's very weird that she would just suddenly decide to use this method after not leaving a note with no previous history of depression or suicidal thoughts. However, despite these red flags, Samantha's death was ruled as a suicide. Now, let's get into the investigation that led police to come to this conclusion. I do just want to kind of warn you now that this case does get really confusing because there are a lot of conflicting stories of what happened and, what the test results were and things like that. So this entire thing is just a little bit of a roller coaster. So first of all, Channahon police collected messages and searches from Samantha's phone and computer that indicate that she could have been in this state of mind before she took her life. First, they found internet searches that showed that she had researched methods of suicide using Zoloft, Xanax, and using a gun on February 11th, 2018. In specific, she had read a Reddit article that talked specifically about how to take one's life using Zoloft. There were also internet searches specifically for the best places to shoot yourself in the head. This search was done at 8:02 a.m. February 13th, 2018, just 17 minutes before Flores called 911. Apparently, she had also been texting back and forth with Flores while they were both in her apartment. These text messages had suicidal overtones, which led investigators to believe that this was also a sign that she was in this state of mind. Also, they found a deleted note from Samantha's phone that had been created on January 28th, 2018 that read, "I'm sorry for what I've done. I'm sorry for my actions. I'm sorry I ruined us. I will never be able to live it down, and I will never forget what I did or be able to forgive myself, let alone expect you to forgive me. I've made mistakes that can't be forgiven. I've shattered your trust. The biggest enemy is my own mind. It replays over and over in my head constantly to the point I feel like I'm going to lose it. I'm my own worst enemy. I feel small. I feel worthless. I feel as if I don't deserve anything, let alone you or your love and affection. I'm constantly reminding myself what I did, and I have you reminding me too. I feel like I can't have feelings or emotions. Mine are pushed away and to the side. If I have a feeling, you get upset. The one thing you said that stuck in my mind doesn't feel good, does it? No, it doesn't. Is that all this is? Is that all we were? Is this my karma? Am I not allowed to have feelings because of my mistakes? My entire life I've been told I'm not good enough. I could do better. I will never be worth anything. For years I tried to tell myself otherwise. I did my best, but it just wasn't good enough. I got great grades. Could have done better. Got a great job. Are you sure you want to do this for the rest of your life? Got a car. Really? Did you need that? A place of my own. Good riddance. I'm not okay. I'm not all right. I'm a prisoner of my own mind, and there's no escape. Medications doesn't help. Therapy doesn't help. I'm trapped. There's no out from this. There's no silver linings. No lessons to be learned. No light at the end of the tunnel. There's nothing. I'm sorry. I can't say it enough. I will never be able to make it up to you or anyone. I'm a disgrace. Salem deserves more than me. He deserves to be with my mom. She can give him a better life than what I've ever dreamed of. Everything will get easier. Everything will be better. This is for the best. Don't make me into a memorial. Don't turn me into a poster child. Don't give me a funeral. Leave me be and leave me in peace. Bury or cremate me and be done with it. I'll be damned if I continue to be a pity party in my afterlife." So that is what investigators collected from Samantha's phone and computer. Now let's go over the physical evidence that they collected from the apartment. Here are the pieces of evidence that investigators gathered. Flores's 2 white socks, 1 black sweatshirt with red blood stains, 1 pair of blue jeans with blood stains, 1 smartwatch with blood stains, gunshot residue kit for Flores, 1 swab of Flores's top right and left hand, 1 swab of Flores's left and right palms, 1 gunshot residue kit for Samantha, and 2 thumb drives of 911 recordings. 8 days after these items were collected, they were transferred to the Illinois State Police Sergeant Carrie Morin, who had been called to the scene to analyze the massive amounts of blood that were present on 2 of the bedroom walls. The following is a direct quote from Sergeant Morin's analysis of the blood on Flores's sweatshirt. Reportedly attempted to provide aid at the scene and was in contact with the victim during moments after sustaining her injury. Due to the dynamics of the incident and the variability involving blood saturation into clothing, the manner in which the blood was deposited onto the sweatshirt cannot be determined. They also performed a DNA test on the gun, where they swabbed the trigger, the side release, and the textured areas of the side and the grip. They found that there was a significant amount of Samantha's DNA on the gun, but there was a mixture of 3 other DNA profiles present on the gun as well. The GSR testing was analyzed by Illinois State Police forensic scientist Mary Wong. She determined that the evidence obtained from Flores' right hand determined that he had either discharged a firearm or had his right hand present in the environment of a discharging firearm. She also determined that the evidence indicated that Samantha did not discharge a firearm, and if she did, the particles were not deposited, removed by activity, or were not detected by the procedure. After testing the GSR on their hands, she was sent Flores' sweatshirt for testing as well, and she determined that there was evidence that he was in the environment of a firearm as it was being discharged. However, despite these findings, the death was ruled as a self-inflicted gunshot wound. However, of course, people were not satisfied with this ruling because, as it turns out, when the Channahon Police Department announced their conclusion, they actually did not disclose the results of the GSR testing to the public. Dr. Brent Turvey, an internationally known forensic consultant from Alaska, said that the GSR testing strongly suggests the possibility that Flores fired the weapon and that there's absolutely no physical evidence that Samantha fired a weapon. He stated that the Channahon police had this information but chose not to disclose it, which is troubling because that means that there must be a reason why they didn't want the public to know. The only reason that we know what we know now is because this information had been released using the Freedom of Information Act. So at this point, I kind of just want to summarize the findings from the Channahon police that led them to their conclusion, as well as the bits of evidence that are contradicting it. So they found internet searches for ways to take one's own life, but these searches were made right before the incident happened, and we know that Flores did have access to Samantha's phone and computer, which means it's not 100% certain that she was the one that made these searches. We also know that there was a deleted note from her phone that she had written about a month prior that had suicidal overtones in it. There were text messages found on her phone between her and Flores that indicated she could have been in that state of mind. However, the family questions why they would be texting back and forth when they were both in her tiny 400 square foot apartment rather than just talking face to face. Why was she texting him all of these suicidal text messages when he was right there? They could have just talked, so that's kind of weird. Now, I don't think I mentioned this before, but the forensic examiner actually did find that the angle and trajectory of the bullet could be consistent with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. They did find that there was blood all over Flores' clothing, as well as gunshot residue on his clothing and hands. And they also found no evidence of gunshot residue on Samantha's body or her hands. So at this point, you're probably frustrated and asking yourself how all of this was able to happen. How was this man so easily cleared from this crime when there was significant evidence pointing him to being in the same room as Samantha when the gun was fired? So much evidence pointing to him lying in his statements. Well, civil rights and wrongful conviction lawyer Jennifer Bonjean thought the same thing and filed a motion asking a Chicago judge to revive the dismissed case. Her, Samantha's parents, and their lawyers have noted all the different ways in which Channahon Police Department failed Samantha and were more concerned with protecting their own than finding justice for Samantha in a wrongful death suit against Flores. They say that the Channahon Police Department conducted a faulty investigation in the following ways. Channahon failed to treat the shooting as a potential homicide. They failed to process the scene of the shooting properly. They failed to properly preserve and inventory physical evidence, including the door to Samantha's room. They failed to conduct an adequate search for firearm evidence. They failed to dust for any fingerprints or any physical evidence. They failed to take inventory of the weapon in this case. They failed to conduct adequate DNA testing to the gun to determine the actual source of the DNA. They failed to record video at the scene. They also failed to conduct testing on all evidence gathered in Samantha's rape kit. It was also revealed that Flores had made multiple contradicting statements. After the incident, Flores claimed that he was talking to Samantha while on the phone with 911, but as we heard in the 911 call, that just simply is not true. However, despite this glaringly obvious lie, Channahon police did not question him on it. Also, we know that on the 911 call and in initial statements, he said that he never touched Samantha. However, he later said that he actually lifted up her head after she shot herself, and he was never questioned on this statement either. Channahon police also just kind of seemed to accept Flores's account of that night. Despite witness testimony that said Samantha had yelled, "Let me go," Flores just claimed that this never happened. Police didn't bother to question him about this and just accepted it as truth. It also came out that Flores was only interviewed once after the incident and was never contacted for a second interview or given a polygraph test. They also just simply did not ask him the proper questions. They didn't bother to ask him why he had blood splatter all over his clothing. Also, after finding out that he had gunshot residue all over him, police never questioned him on whether he was in the room or how he got these particles all over him. They also noted that Flores was not wearing any shoes at the time when investigators showed up. As we remember from before, Flores had blood splatter on his hoodie and jeans, but his socks were clean and white. He claimed that he was kneeling next to her body as she was bleeding out, but his socks had absolutely no blood on them. Detectives didn't bother to question him on this or look to see if maybe he had taken off some shoes that had evidence on it, or maybe he put on a fresh pair of socks after the incident had happened. They didn't bother to look for any sort of evidence in that manner. Additionally, in most cases, investigators compile a timeline of events leading up to the incident. For example, he stated that he showed up to Samantha's apartment the night before and had slept over. Normally, police would ask something like, "What happened between you and Samantha at 11 p.m. the night that you showed up to her apartment?" However, investigators in this case did no such thing. I also do want to point out that when police informed Samantha's parents of their daughter's death, like I said earlier, they said it in a very matter-of-fact manner that she took her own life. But in addition to that, they had also straight up lied to them, saying that she did test positive for gunshot residue and said that Flores did not test positive for gunshot residue. They also failed to tell them about the altercation that broke out right before her death and didn't disclose the fact that he had blood all over his clothing. If that doesn't speak volumes about the motives of these officers, I don't know what else does. As of right now, I do not think that Flores is currently working as a police officer for Crest Hill. He was placed on paid suspension after the incident and had a reinstatement hearing in March, but right before the hearing, he actually resigned, saying that he was pursuing other career options. So I'm not exactly for sure what he's doing right now, but as far as I know, he's not a police officer right now. We also know that he hasn't bothered to reach out to Samantha's parents at any time at all after this incident, which they said is troubling because they had spoken plenty of times while the two were dating. So the fact that he never reached out to her parents after their daughter and his girlfriend supposedly took her own life is very telling. So as far as we know, Samantha's parents and their lawyers are fighting against their daughter's ruling in a wrongful death suit, but at this point, that is pretty much all of the information that we have. I'm not sure what stages the suit is in right now or when it will be concluded. That's pretty much all of the information I have for right now. This case is just absolutely ridiculous and is a very glaringly obvious example of a police cover-up, in my opinion. There is just an overwhelming plethora of evidence pointing to Flores lying and even more evidence showing that police botched this investigation. This case is absolutely infuriating, and I just wish that more was being done to find justice for Samantha and her family. This case has been extremely difficult to research because there are just so many twists and turns and misinformation and lies. One article would be so, very opinion based, and then the next would just try to spin its own story. I tried sticking to the most reliable sources and information that I could, but again, this case is just absolutely insane. Samantha deserves justice, and it just seems that no one cares. I don't understand how the family is having such a hard time when there is just so much evidence pointing to Flores being responsible, or at the very least having something to do with it, or lying. I just desperately hope that Samantha gets the justice that she needs and deserves. So that is it for today's video. I know this case was very confusing and very frustrating, but I just wanted to make sure that I got Samantha's case out there. I hope by making this video, Samantha's case gets more attention and more eyes on it. Thank you guys so much for listening to Samantha's story, and all I ask is that you guys look into her story yourself and share her story wherever you can. Look at the facts, look at the evidence, and come to your own conclusions. So that is all I have for you guys today. What do you think of this case? Do you think that there is a cover-up going on, or do you think something else is at play? Do you think that the evidence points to Flores being responsible for Samantha's death, or do you think that people just have tunnel vision? Please let me know in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to follow my Twitter and Instagram. Both will be linked in the description below. If you do have any other case suggestions, please just shoot me an email at RachelShannonCases@gmail.com, which will also be in the description box below. With that, I hope you guys have a great week, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!